Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time today to join us on the webinar organized by the DALIM Users Organization, or DUO for short. My name is Graham Blanks and I'm the Director of Business Operations for DALIM Software here in North America. Today's webinar is the first in a series that we're planning to host, entitled Do More with Less, with this first webinar focusing on PDF, otherwise known as portable document format. We've put together a great panel of industry professionals with decades of experience in their respective industry, and we'll be sharing some of their thoughts and insights around today's topic. Let me just quickly introduce the panelists. We have Matt Kuznicki. He is the chairman of the board of the PDF Association. We have Alan Darling, who is the Vice President of Information Systems at the Quantum Group. And then we have Colin Price, who is Strategic Sales Consultant for DALIM Software in the UK. We'll let each of the panelists provide a little bit more background on themselves and the organization that they represent during their presentations. A note to all of the attendees, on the right, you will see a panel where you can post questions. Please go ahead, post any questions during the webinar, but we will hold off going through those questions until all of the presenters have finished and concluded their presentations. So we'll have a Q&A session after the three presenters have concluded with their presentations. But before we get started, I want to hand over to our CEO, Carol Verley, for a brief introduction before we kick off the presentations. Over to you, Carol.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Graham. We're particularly thrilled to come to you on air. As you know, DALIM is more a company that organizes events. We have our DUO events travel around the world, but taking the circumstances, it was quite obvious that with all this content, we could not wait until the next time we see each other to share that content with you. So in a matter of a few weeks, we could basically put all the content in the shape of webinars, and we're happy to share them with you. That first webinar we are in is a first episode of season 1, and we're particularly happy to also report, before we actually get further in this webinar, that our company, just like I guess most of you at the other end of the line, is working from home. We went basically online 100% from home on March 12 and have not returned to the office yet. The president of France yesterday announced another 4 weeks of quarantine, basically meaning it will be another month until we get back to the office. Same goes for Germany, with a little less tougher rules, which is one of the reasons why I could make it to the office today, exceptionally. And as you can see from this chart, which basically illustrates with the Jira request statistics how we're doing, the week 12 is the week we went actually home. Week 12 happened actually to be 60% more efficient than every other week. So we had funny discussions, actually thinking that maybe we should think of limiting the square meters we occupy on the other side of the bridge here in Germany, if this is actually to bring a peak like this one into the achievement of software development and things like that. So I thought it was funny to mention that to you. But we're not only doing work when we're home, as you know, and we could not resist to basically think of what else we could do. And one of the engagement we have taken to one of our engineer that has led a team of innovators is basically to design the COVID Buster. COVID Buster is basically a shield that we can offer to frontliners. It's been designed in 3D printing. We were one of the first one investing into 3D printers a few years ago, and we could put our printers and a few others back to work. And as we speak, we are producing about, in the little community we are here on the both sides of the bridge, something like a little more than 1,000 shields a day, which we help actually dispatching to everything. So you will receive in the following a round of communication, some links to basically go there and manufacture your own shield, and maybe also, who knows, start a community as well. Now, back to our event. As you know, this is more what our events are, linking culture, music, meeting, technology. And we're sorry we couldn't do that this year. This was Duo last year in Nashville, to give you the tone. That is more what we usually do. But having taken you this year to New Orleans would have actually looked like that. New Orleans Bourbon Street right now is pretty as empty as many of our streets, and it definitely would not have been an option to wait until the next time we can go there. So there we go with Duo on Air. So Duo on Air is basically a concentrate of what we have for stories and what we gather, which we usually present at Duo, and what we also concentrate into the magazine that we usually publish at that time of the year. And because that magazine is special, we'll bring you, for the next webinar, first-class speaker straight from actually Lisbon, not Barcelona, forgive that little typo, but Mr. Martin Kunz, who you are looking at right now, is the editor-in-chief of the ADAC magazine. As editor-in-chief, he looks over the largest drivers association in Germany. And that association, which basically you subscribe to and will get you out of trouble anywhere you are, in general, is also publishing a magazine. That magazine runs at 14 million copies every month, 10 times a year. And from 2020 onward, they changed the whole concept. It will basically only be available 4 times a year at 4.5 million copies, and will no longer ship home, but it will be actually available to pick up at the luxury retailers or premium retailers, food retailers, so accessible in COVID times, to basically adding also the print to the online experience that the ADAC is going to do. So if you want to listen to more of this story, please tune in to the next webinar, which will also line up 2 of the participants in this transformation, one being the large gravure and offset printer Burda, and also digital printer that we have around the corner here, which is also a publisher of multiple magazines, along with Storyboard, another of our clients that has helped into the transformation. So we count to see you there at the next opportunity, which will be next week on the 21st of April, and it will be the 2nd episode of this first season. Then let me take us all to Chicago. This is probably just about how the Chicago streets must look like right now. And it happens that our 2 speakers are from Chicago. Colin, on the right-hand side, which you've been introduced to briefly, is calling from the UK. I'm in Germany. Most of us are around the world. I don't think this Duo on Air could be any more global. But before we get more into the heart of it, let me say a few words of my last visit to Chicago. These pictures have been taken at Quantum, as well as this picture here. The gentleman you see smiling here is Alan, which you will hear in a few minutes. And at the end of the table, over there, you can see down on the right-hand side, Cheryl. Cheryl is the CEO of Quantum, and I'm thankful to know them since many, many years, so that together we could invent something that is becoming a new product. And I'm quite excited actually to let Colin explain you more about it when his turn to speak comes. But because we can't do a webinar just like anybody else, and because our roots are in print, because Drupa was cancelled, because we won't actually see you around for at least another couple of months, we thought we'd do that differently. Together, jointly, we're inventing today the webinar to print. You probably knew until now web to print. Today, there is a webinar to print. So this magazine cover you're looking at is going to be personalized depending on your input, provided we have your address where to ship that magazine. We will also send it to your door. So we were quite happy to do that with you. and there will be quite a number of things to discover into this magazine. Things you're going to hear about in the upcoming webinars. As you can see, we have material for at least a couple months in front of us, and we're very happy actually to be able to put a print material in your hands following actually a webinar presentation, as this is not something we think is being done too often, and we're here actually to support print as well. I will not actually speak anymore because we have so many good things to talk about. I'd like to thank you for staying on with us until now, and I will hand over to Matt.
Thank you, Carol, for that message. And just a reminder for those of you that have registered for this webinar, if you send us your address, we will be happy to mail out a magazine as Carol suggested. Now I'm going to hand over to Matt Kuznicki, who is the chairman of the board of the PDF Association, to hear from him about State of the Union as it relates to PDF. Over to you, Matt, and make you the presenter.
Thank you, Graham. So thank you, everybody. I want to talk very briefly about doing more with less, in the spirit of PDF, and update everybody on PDF standards for the print industry. But first, I want to give 1 minute about PDF, portable document format. For over a quarter century, PDF has been the leading platform for authors, for publishers to communicate their digital paper intent and experience reliably to their vast audiences. Since 2001, PDF has been a key technology in making print more reliable with the advent of the PDFX family of standards. With the PDFA family of standards, PDF for archiving, PDF has become the leading and predominant platform for long-term information preservation in a digital format. For over a decade now, since 2008, PDF has been openly and freely available and implementable through Adobe Systems' donation of PDF to the international standards community through ISO. And since 2010, PDF has been revolutionizing RIP performance for variable data print jobs and enabling all of us to get more complicated, more interactive, and more personalized documents to readers faster. PDF 2.0, published in 2017, contains some fairly significant updates for printing. Transparency, which is really the bugaboo of some of our workflows, has been rewritten to reflect the best practices that we've found from industry over the past decade. Black point compensation, which many workflows have been taking advantage of for a number of years, was standardized in PDF 2.0 and is available not just on a document basis, not just on a page basis, but on a page part basis. Very fine, great fine control of that. Output intents, that is characterizations of the color a document is meant to be represented in, have been added for documents, for pages, and sets for various process conditions. Spectral color data definitions in CXF format are available in PDF 2.0. And PDF 2.0 brought in from PDF VT what's known as document part or D-part metadata to segment multi-page multi-part documents into various parts. PDF continues to evolve. PDF 2.0 is a living standard. It continues with a focus on maximum forward and backward compatibility, but does continue to evolve. The 2020 dated revision to PDF 2.0, which is coming up later this year, correct some typos, add some clarifications, won't change anything notably for the print industry. It's more a tightening of the standard. But the process of taking a decade to go from PDF 1.7 to PDF 2.0 and another 3 years to this dated revision has helped the standards community understand the need for a more agile means for updating PDF specifications. So we as a standards community are moving to an extension-based mechanism to allow for portional or incremental updates to PDF driven by industry adopted standards and practices without having to wait another 3 years or another decade for a new significant PDF version. PDF continues to evolve for print as well. I want to talk about a few standards, recent and upcoming, processing steps, and print product metadata, as well as PDFX and PDFVT and their continued evolution. ISO 19593 processing steps is a standard from 2018, I believe, that specifies how to process the non-printed components of a PDF print job. So, for example, I think many of us are familiar with using layers or optional content or specifically named spot colors in PDFs to signify die cut lines or laser cut lines or gluing regions, other instructions for processing PDFs that are not part of the printed output. Processing steps builds on the metadata standard put out by the Ghent work group and replaces these ad hoc mechanisms that the industry has used for specifying these into a more standardized form that can be used with PDF 1.7 as well as PDF 2.0. The print product metadata standard, ISO 21812, has some significant overlap with processing steps, but has some key differences. Print product metadata, this standard published last year, builds on the work of SIP4 and SIP4's job processing metadata, as well as XJDF, which is a simplified form of JDF, job description format, job ticketing, and allows producers to specify characteristics of produced print outputs and portions of print outputs. For example, on a document level, binding, folding, stapling, other such instructions, types of instructions can be specified. For parts of publications, for example, an insert that has a different page media with a different folding scheme than its encompassing document, 21812 allows specification of this. And like processing steps can be used with PDF 1.7, with PDFX4 in print product metadata's case, as well as PDF 2.0. So two fairly recent, very exciting standards, both dealing with the data on how to produce PDF documents, standardizing things that as an industry we've typically had to go back and forth with our customers on to get standardized, to get right. PDFX, PDF for graphic file exchange, many of us are familiar with, and its myriad versions. PDFX6 updates PDFX for use with PDF 2.0. It is an evolution of PDFX, predominantly the same as earlier versions of PDFX, but using PDF 2.0. One very important update is the inclusion of annotations of acroforms and of digital signatures as allowed in PDFX6 files. However, no interactive content is allowed in PDFX6 files. In other words, viewers will not use viewer preferences or open actions or JavaScript or other PDF content that could change the appearance of a document based on user or viewer actions. Instead, for all of these, normal appearances as baked into these annotations and forms, these appearances are now required as of PDF 2.0. These are used for rendering PDFX6 files. No calculations or content update is performed. PDFX6, like PDF 2.0, allows for multiple output intents. This was put in to make combining multiple PDFX files easier. So say you have a PDFX 6 file that is an output intent of FOGRA variant, for example, and another that is in US SWAP v2. Now these two can be combined into one file without having to change the color to do a color transformation on one or the other. And finally, black point compensation, unlike in PDF 2.0, defaults to being enabled for all graphical format. This is the opposite of PDF 2.0. PDFX6, standard in process, expected to be published either later this year or in 2021. PDF VT, PDF for variable data print, one that maybe fewer of us are familiar with. PDF VT3 is in the works to update PDF VT for PDF 2.0. Also evolutionary like PDF 2.0 and PDFX6. Those of you who aren't using PDF VT, I would encourage you to check it out. PDF VT enabled workflows and RIPs with the PDF VT files are valid PDF files with information for RIPs on object reuse, which enables variable data print jobs that are a mix of repeated and personalized content across large documents to rip and to print dramatically faster than PDF alone. PDF VT3 files are PDFX6 files, so as soon as PDFX6 is published, we expect PDF VT3 to be published in late this year or in 2021. That's the future. How about today? What version of PDFX should you encourage your customers to use today? If you have a workflow that can't handle transparency, then PDFX 1A, PDFX 3, the 2002 versions of these, are really your best bet. They're going to be a very simple way to get your users to generate something that doesn't have transparency. If your workflow can handle transparency but cannot handle layers or JPEG 2000, then PDFX3, the 2003 version, or PDFX4 are great versions to use. If blind exchange, if true ability to have your customer hand you a file and to be as sure as possible that you can take it and produce it without any further interaction, PDFX3, either the 2002 or the 2003 variant, with one of the preset application settings put out by groups such as the Ghent Work Group or Pass for Press, is really the best bet today in a total hands-off blind exchange scenario. All three of these, however, reduce the ability to express certain content in return for greater reliability and more hands-off processing. If your users want richer graphic content, and many of them probably do, seeing as they're competing with screens and interactivity and mobile and phone and other means of getting their attention, PDFX4, PDFX5, the upcoming PDFX6 are all going to enable richer content and better, more captivating printed experiences. However, they're likely to require, at least for the time being, more communication with customers. More information, I've included some links. The PDF Association's PDFX in a Nutshell guide is a great introduction to PDFX, goes into much more detail than I did here. PDF 2.0 is here. The keynote presentation from PDF Days 2017 contains a lot of information about PDF 2.0's enhancements and changes. And Dove Isaac's presentation at the Print Industry of America Color Conference in 2019, end-to-end publishing with PDF 2.0 and PDFX6 contains a lot more detail about what blind exchange is and how PDFX6 will enable more captivating print experiences. Now, a minute about the PDF Association, who we are. The PDF Association is the meeting place, the gathering place of the PDF industry. The PDF Association, we promote awareness and adoption of ISO standardized PDF technologies to industry, to government, to nonprofit, and other users. This includes standards development and incubation for proposed standards, for ideas that people have. We provide working groups and mechanisms for codifying in a vendor neutral form these ideas and best practices into standards. We offer expert communities of PDF implementers and users who can speak as experts to resolve into issues that are seen in the field, as well as general PDF education, expertise, and shared experience from our over 120 corporate members, over 150 total members, really from across the world. So if you want to learn more about us, please visit our website, www.pdfa.org/about-us. I'm Matt Kuznicki. I chair the PDF Association Board of Directors. More information about me you can find on my LinkedIn page. In the meantime, I hope that everybody stays safe. I want to give my thanks to DALIM for allowing me to kick off their webinar series. And I urge everybody to stay safe. Let's all do what we can to keep everybody safe. And hopefully we'll see each other in person fairly soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. That was an excellent presentation. Lots of very, very useful information. I did like your last slide there with the nice little graphic. So now we're going to switch to Alan Darling, who's going to talk about a real world example of the challenges and opportunities that face all of us today in the printing industry, when we all have to deal with PDF files that originate from a multitude of different sources. Over to you, Alan.
Hello, everyone. I would say good morning because it's morning here in Chicago, but I'm sure it's all different times of the world, the day in different parts of the world. Matt, I want to thank you for that presentation. Standards can be a dry topic, and I've been involved with them personally for a long time, but they are so important. And if we get on to the topic, the primary topic of what we're going to talk about in terms of my presentation, not all PDF files are created equal. Sadly, if more people used PDFX formats, my life and anyone who handles PDFs around the world in terms of production, you'd find life an awful lot easier. But right now, the reality is we've got to handle all the crap that comes downhill and lands in our feet at the bottom of the presses. So let's just quickly let you know what Quantum's all about. So Quantum's a commercial offset and digital printer. We're based just outside of Chicago in 200,000 square feet, 250 people. There's some stats on the side there. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. We're about 45% conventional offset, 55% digital offset, and it's the digital side of things, especially in terms of the direct mail portion of our business that I want to focus on, because that's really where these applications have had a huge impact. So what we're playing with here is we have a couple of Indigo 10,000s, 12,000 with HD on it, and a 7800 in terms of what we have available on the cut sheet side of things. And in terms of the real beneficiary of the things that we've been up to, it's these postcards that you see on the side here. Each postcard can be different, and not only can each postcard be different, but we can we can mix our clients client to client. So we're dealing with a client who has multiple clients themselves that's producing this work. So it can be mixed within a specific sheet from client to client, what we call manifesting over here. We're on a B2 size sheet, 29 by 20, depending whether you're metric or imperial. And this thing is, each of those devices that I said, pointed out before, are capable of producing about 1,500 sheets an hour. And the orders, which come in randomly with no warning, although some of the really big ones, we do get a bit of a heads up. We get anywhere from one card in an order to 1 million, and in fact, some cases over 1 million. So kind of challenging. If we look at the web side of the world, we have a T240. It's a really huge machine. You saw the picture of it in Carol's introduction. So the T240, it turns out rolls of printed letters. So that's a picture of a roll you can see on the right-hand side there. Each of those letters can be different, and we effectively have a sheet of paper that's 18 inches wide by 40,000 feet long. So a full sheet holds somewhere in the region of 80,000 pages. That number is important because we try and batch the work when it's going through so that we're filling up rolls. So when you have those orders of 1 million letters coming in, you're actually filling up complete rolls at a time, which makes the press run at optimal speeds. And the optimal speeds that we're running at right now is about 500 feet a minute. So if you do the math on that, it's about 60,000 8.5 by 11 pages every hour comes out the back of that machine, which is kind of frightening. And again, these orders of the letters, like the orders of the postcards, can be anywhere from 1 to 1 million for a specific order for a specific client that we've got going through. But obviously, when we're dealing with rolls, we've got to do something with these rolls afterwards. So that goes on to our lovely kern. And the kern, if you look at the left-hand side of the kern there, you'll see there's a roll of paper in there. And the right-hand end of it, right at the back end of it, there's envelopes. And so what we're producing off here is inserted envelopes. We can actually inkjet inline on the device itself, so you can do things like putting logos on those envelopes inside of there. And we're running at about 27,000 of the letters coming off every hour. And to put that in perspective, when you see it running, it's kind of cool. It runs off at about 8 envelopes a second coming out the back end. It's really pretty amazing. And all those letters are coming out in mail pre-sort order, and we'll talk about that through the workflow. And we also have an automated reprinting solution. So when there is spoilage, because there is always spoilage when you're running at these speeds, it actually gets resubmitted to our production process in an automated manner with no one touching it. So it gets reprinted and run through again. We're not going to touch on that aspect of the workflow today. We're going to look at the input and the processing of it. So apologies for all the words on this slide, but we'll go through it. So this is the DALIM, the pre-DALIM workflow. So this is how we were running before we took on the DALIM solution, which again we'll talk about in a second. So we're going to deal here with the ingestion of the files coming in over the internet. We're going to talk about CAS and NCOA. For those of you outside of the US, and probably some of you inside of the US, you've never heard of CAS and NCOA. So CAS is Coding Accuracy Support System, and NCOA is the National Change of Address. These are both databases that the United States Post Office puts out and gives people access, or we pay to get access to, which means that we're accurately addressing. So we'll take the address list in from a client and we'll make sure that it's accurate if they wish, and up to date. We pre-flight those files that go through VDP and print. So as I mentioned before, the files arrive without notice. So we just start getting files whenever they want to start sending us files. We have a 48-hour SLA. We have a cutoff on a daily basis of 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Time. So they just throw files at us all day long until 2 o'clock, and then we say, whoop, we better get those processed. And they go into the process and come out the other end as letters or postcards. So typically we have a JSON metadata file that comes in for each of the letters or postcards that comes in through an API. JSON again is JavaScript object notation, which means it's human readable when it comes in. Not that we read it very much. We have better things to do at that time than that. So once we get these metadata files in, they used to actually download the ART files from the client side, which are typically up in AWS nowadays, Amazon Web Services up in the cloud. We pull those files down. We have a couple of 1 gig lines that we have going out to the world. So we're pulling those files in at somewhere between 60,000 to 100,000 files an hour, obviously dependent on the size of those files, but that's the general run we have for the letter and the postcard files. We take the address information that comes in and we run it against, as I said, CAS and NCOA, and we can do that on a client-by-client basis. So if, for example, you've got legal letters and you don't want the letter to go to a divorced wife, for example, or a divorced husband, they can choose not to do CAS and NCOA. So in other words, it goes to the original address as opposed to the updated address. So the pre-flighting we were using before we got DALIM in there was truly one of the limiting factors that we had. The problem we had was a lack of functionality and also, most significantly, a lack of speed. So what we had to do is compromise on the amount of pre-flighting we're doing, which, as we all know, in production, compromises always lead to problems, and this is just like that. We led to problems, and once the file was pre-flighted, it was manifested. The manifested address data and the ART were batched on our Quadient GMC system, and multi-page PDF files were output based on whatever rules we have for actually batching those, and we have several different batching rules, which again are too much detail for this presentation. So hopefully that little run through makes some sense. So the problem we ended up with going to this method of working with things was we had this pre-flight induced bottleneck that was going on. So according to HP, the manufacturer of all our presses that we use inside of here, all our digital presses, excuse me, they say you should keep your files at around 2 gigs. And those of you that have them, you'll know very well if you try and stuff a 4 gig file down a T240's throat, it doesn't like it very much at all. But even so, with 2 gigs per file that we got breaking it down to, it still ends up with each of those files having thousands of pages, i.e. postcards and letters in them. And there is a potential for the files to fail at the rip. And the challenge, just to make life interesting for us, it's different behaviors, whether you're going through the Indigos or the T240. They don't exactly have the same profiles, so to speak. And frankly, what was happening was we were getting some files that broke on the press. Not a nice thing to have when you have multiple thousands of pages that are sitting there waiting for the press to run through. And frankly, the forensics for going in to actually identify what the errors were and fixing them can take hours. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And added to that layer was the fact that we're manifesting. So we have multiple clients mixed in on those large files, large complex files we got, and going in there and editing on a very detailed basis is both an error-prone and an iterative process. Not very nice. So inevitably we had delays, and those delays, because they were outside of the SLAs, led to financial penalties, which my CEO, whose picture you saw earlier on with Carol quietly slipping a glass of Veuve Clicquot. She wasn't that happy about it, quite frankly. So the other thing that we had a problem with, which is, everyone says go back and talk to your client. Well, the problem with this is the clients, the files that we receive from our client, our direct client, could be 3 generations away from the person who originally created them. A real problem that is, quite frankly, insurmountable. There's no way of getting back to have a different file submitted. The other problem we deal with on a constant basis is there is the belief for our clients that there is a big green print button in the sky that generates PDFs that perform perfectly and flawlessly. Well, we all know that's not the case. And there are limited skills of these clients. A lot of these clients have been set up in the States, at least, startups where there are people that believe in the beauty and infallibility of PDF files. And it's difficult to talk them out of that. It's a challenge anyway, at least. And on top of this, those delays that we were getting in not only led to financial penalties, but they really eat away at the confidence of your clients in terms of your capabilities of generating the volumes that they require. And that lack of confidence obviously adversely affects the volume of files that they're going to send you. Why would I send 1 million files to Quantum if they're going to break the SLAs and be late with these things? So it was a lot of problems which were primarily induced by this pre-flight. So what happens? Well, Carol and Graham rode in on a white horse. It was actually a social visit, quite frankly, because they've both known both Cheryl, our CEO, and myself for many years, as Carol said in the opening, I think decades, which is accurate. And they came in and they sat down and said, what keeps you up nights? And obviously, one of my topics that keeps me awake at night is the fact that we have this pre-flight problem. And Carol proceeded to explain to me that the idea of putting Twist as a microservice that can be highly parallelized on a multi-core server, which may sound a bit nerdy and geeky, I apologize for that, but it's kind of cool. So we put together an idea in very short shrift, probably I think it was actually in 2 to 3 weeks from the start of saying we're going to do this to actually going live with it. It was quite scary. We initially had a 64-core server that we had in here that we wanted to try this out on. It was multi-threaded, so we had 70 cores. So in other words, we could work on in parallel 70 different files at any one time. And with that, we got to run at just about 8 files a second. So then we went out and we decided, we went live with this actually on October 31st of last year. It was very successful, but we wanted to go faster. You can never go too fast. So we went out and found this server that had 256 multi-threaded cores on it, and we ended up specifying it as 200. I'll talk about why we settled on that a little later. So 200 single-threaded cores, and that took us up to, depending on the complexity of what we were doing. Matt mentioned transparency. One of the things that we do like to do on here is flatten transparency, because it really does increase performance, and the trade-off is huge in terms of our ability to produce more files if they're pre-flattened. So we're getting somewhere in the region of 10 to 18 files a second, which is pretty damn quick. And we've actually taken that initial server and we use that as backup. So just in case we have a failure, we now have 2 servers that we're running the Twist solution on. So our workflow becomes a little different. We're doing the same file ingestion. So again, there's files in it, somewhere in the region between 60 and 100,000 files an hour coming through. But we're taking every single PDF file and we're testing it against a specific pre-flight. Now, if it doesn't need fixing, it goes through, which is great. So in other words, we're not wasting time doing any normalization and writing, so it goes straight through. If a file fails the pre-flight, it's normalized. And if it normalizes correctly, because it checks whether it's normalized and written correctly, it continues straight through. If it fails there, for whatever reason, it goes on to what we call force fixed, which is basically we get a big baseball bat out and whack the file over the head as hard as we possibly can until it finally works. It can be as crude as actually taking that failed PDF file, which remember now is only one letter or one postcard that we're failing inside of here, not multi-thousands of the damn things. So if we force fix it, we can actually PostScript and actually redistill that file. It normally works. The direction we have from our clients is generally make it work and print it. We don't want anything back here. If it can't be force fixed, it's rejected. We have had since October the 31st on the launch that we did on here, we have had about a dozen files that have been actually finally rejected through here. So I'm really pleased with it. All right, so the results, let's see what we're getting out of this. So we are running between 36,000 to 70,000 PDF files an hour through this server. It really does scream. We are getting 7 nines accuracy. That's 99.99999% accuracy. So this means files are working correctly and not blocking the productivity. Reducing our costs, increasing productivity, but it's not just about the volume of files that we can get through here. So if you take 70 and multiply it by 24, it's a lot. But it's not about the volume, it's about the speed. We have to meet these SLAs, and when the thing closes at 2, we have to get that stuff out of there as soon as we possibly can. And obviously with this higher accuracy we're getting, there's been a significant, and I mean 90% reduction in the SLA penalties that we've been forced into paying because of being late on these pieces. And that, by the way, has increased the trust in our clients' eyes. They now look at us as being the go-to company when it comes to working out how to make workflows run. And we make multiple presentations to them. And I know it's a little bit trite, but we are a trusted supplier to our client now. And with that comes the increased volume in work that we're getting from them. So it's a win-win-win situation. So what do we got left to do? Well, you know, there's always one more way someone can break a PDF file. We all know that. There's always new and interesting ways that you can screw it up. This DALIM support has been great. So if we find something that breaks, we try and force fix it and get it through. But if there's something new and different, we get in touch with the DALIM support team, and they actually work with us to sort that out, which has been great so far, as I say. Our clients, as I mentioned before, are 2 or 3 generations away, so we actually have business challenges in talking them down from, well, I want it now, and it's a PDF file, so you should be able to do something with it. Well, you know what? Again, those of you who work with PDFs all day long know that that's not the truth. Scaling, in terms of scaling, what we've discovered when we got that big boy server in with 256 cores on it, what we found was that if we put too many cores against the application, it can actually swamp the whole server. So what we found is that 200 level is a nice level to sit at, and if we need to, we can put multiple servers in there. The infrastructure we have in place allows us to do that, so we will scale. It's somewhat blunt force scaling, but it does allow us to scale if we need to get those multiples of files up there. So just to finish off my presentation, the key takeaways for me is it's all about partnerships in multiple levels. DALIM has been a great partner. I mean, just having Carol and Graham come around and talk to us about this stuff and getting it moving as soon as they did, and the ability of their team to work with us to find new and different ways of fixing screwed up PDF files has been great. It's also opened up frank dialogue with our clients, with your clients in general, and if you adopt these services, you can get this too. It pays real dividends in having these dialogues with them, and you end up training and partnering with your clients. I've done training for several of our clients' teams specifically about what it is that we do. A lot of these people don't even understand the printing process, so going back in and explaining a lot from them. And just the other takeaway I've got, which is such an obvious statement, but there are so many PDF engines out there. Some of them are crap. They're free, but they're crap, and they turn out rubbish when they go through there. But you know what? We have to live with them. We have to make them work if we possibly can. And just as a final thought, business imperatives overrule logic, which means the client several of our clients have told us to actually force fix those files, no matter what the implications are. And with that, I am going to throw it back over to Graham, and we'll get some questions.
Thank you, Alan. So we have a number of questions that have come in, but before we get into a Q&A session and cover some of the questions posted by the attendees, we'll conclude with Colin Price's presentation, which will hopefully talk a little bit more about, or a little bit detail about, what our solution is and has been used at the Quantum Group. Over to you, Colin.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Colin Price from DALIM Software. Welcome to my short presentation in which I discuss the growth in inkjet printing and the implications for this for print service providers. We've already heard from Alan at Quantum Group how DALIM provided a solution for his problems, and I'd like to present our solution as a new product from DALIM. So my presentation explores why industrial high-speed inkjet needs industrial high-speed workflow. If we look at inkjet as a technology, it really is accelerating both in terms of speed and quality. And there are many manufacturers of inkjet presses. The technology and number of manufacturers is increasing rapidly, and I think Drupal would have been a big one for inkjet. The diversity of presses available is enabling high-speed inkjet to spread into commercial print, packaging and labels, corrugated and point of sale, as well as transactional printing. Faster inkjet presses coming to market has implications. Firstly, more speed means more digital data is needed to drive the presses. Secondly, if variable data is required, then potentially every page can be different. Here are just a few examples of such printing solutions in the commercial and transactional sector. First thing to note is the speeds at the moment are around about 150 meters per minute. That's 490 feet per minute. Note that the price ranges for such machines range between $1 million and $6 million. So they need to spend as much time printing as possible in order to pay back their return on investment. Idle time where they just sat there is just wasting money. So it's all about the ROI for these machines and keeping them running. In other sectors, such as corrugated and point of sale, it's a similar story, but with even bigger printing dimensions. For example, the EFI Nozomi prints 75 meters per minute, but that's across a width of 1.8 meters. So for the Americans, it's 246 feet per minute across a 6-foot width. So what are the implications on a normal or conventional pre-press workflow? Well, with conventional printing, files are used to make plates, so problem files never reach the press. Also, you're printing a fixed image, so workflow capacity is not really stressed. In short, problems found on plates can be fixed with minimal cost. But when you're printing digitally, your workflow sends files straight to the press. So any file going to the press needs to be certain to print. Plus, every page can potentially be different. Workflow performance also has to be faster than your print speeds, because any problems found on press will cost you time and money. If you invest in high-speed inkjet, what are the threats of doing nothing to your workflow? Well, as we heard from Alan in the previous presentation, Quantum's experience was that jobs were being pulled due to bad files, inefficient PDFs would slow down the press DFE or digital front end, presses would be standing, and Alan estimated for up to 3.5 hours per day. And perhaps most importantly in Alan's case, they were not meeting the agreed SLAs with their customers, and that carried financial penalties. The case at Quantum also teaches us one more thing. Inkjet press manufacturers don't necessarily have the answers in their supplied digital front ends. After all, their core competency is really in hardware and ink. So now it's time to introduce our solution, DALIM Drive. DALIM Drive will help you maximize your inkjet press investment. DALIM Drive automatically pre-flights, normalizes, and fixes supplied files up front. And as we saw from Quantum's example, 99.99999% of cases, the files are dealt with in this way. For the ones that aren't, it quarantines those for operator attention. No matter how demanding your press is for data, DALIM Drive can be scaled to work faster. DALIM Drive is a JDF device, so it can be easily integrated into many of the existing workflows out there in use. Also, manufacturers take note. If you're a manufacturer of an inkjet press, then DALIM Drive is a possible solution for you to put in front. It's also available through a monthly software as a service subscription and as an on-site black box deployment. With DALIM Drive, the files that reach your expensive inkjet press are certain to print correctly at full printing speed. Let's take a look at some performance indicators just to add to what Alan was saying. With a 100 core license, we can process over 50 pages per second. We can scale this down or up by any amount. And last but not least, the system comes with a full suite of reporting and KPI analysis tools, so you can monitor and gauge its activity. So if you want to know more, and if you want to request a demo, then don't hesitate in contacting us, the link there below, and or scan the QR code.
Great, thank you, Colin.
That's mine. I think I stuck to 5 minutes, Graham.
Yeah, I think we're running a little over our time, and we're going to open it up to Q&A. We have a few questions for each of the panelists, so we'll get started. We've only got a few minutes left remaining, but we'll try and get through as many as possible. So one of the questions that came in, and this is probably more directed at Matt's presentation. We hear a lot about 2.0. In fact, I think even here at DALIM, we're obviously making sure that we'll be ready, and if we're not already doing so, adding support for PDF 2.0. But to your presentation, Matt, PDF 2.0 seems like it's an evolving standard. Are there any vendors that have actually adopted 2.0? Are there any people creating PDF 2.0 files today?
Sure, there are many vendors who have adopted PDF 2.0 from a RIP support side. Many RIPs that are based on Adobe's PDF print engine, the Adobe PDF library, as well as Global Graphics and Harlequin's offerings have updated to accept PDF 2.0 files. On the production side, on the creation side, I should say, many pieces of software can create PDF 2.0 files, but what we found is that most of them will only create a PDF 2.0 file if a user invokes a piece of functionality that is only expressible in PDF 2.0. So in other words, for most user documents, when they go to PDF, they're not using features that actually require PDF 2.0. So their creation software continues to create PDF 1.7 or earlier versions of PDF. And this makes a lot of sense, right? If it's not broken, why fix it? If something doesn't need to be a PDF 2.0 file, and if it doesn't gain anything from being a PDF 2.0 file, then I think many of these packages, much of this software, makes the right choice in not expressing it necessarily as a PDF 2.0 file. That said, there is fairly broad support for PDF 2.0 on the consumption side, on the RIP side. And I would, especially as people become more familiar with the capabilities that are new in PDF 2.0 and through the evolution of PDF 2.0 as an ongoing and as a living standard, really just as PDF has been an ongoing and evolving standard throughout its lifetime. This isn't new, but as more creators take advantage of more of those capabilities, I would expect to see more and more PDF 2.0 based jobs coming in and being produced.
All right, thank you, Matt. Here's another question, and I'll actually put this question to all three of the panelists. It's a question I really wasn't able to answer. So, is there a PDF standard in which ingredient information is specifically called out in the prepress of packaging and extracted? So, I guess this would be a two-part question. Is there a specific PDF format that supports the ability to call out ingredients, I guess, for packaging work? And then are there solutions out there that can handle that? And I throw that to all three panelists, if anybody has any ideas.
This is Alan. I haven't been involved in packaging, so I pass.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, Matt here, from a standards perspective, I'm not aware of any such standard.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
But that's I'll have to look around a bit. That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, we'll have to investigate that.
Graham, just a quick point. Would ES
go ahead,
not?
Colin.
I was going to say, would ES not be able to take the packaging data and make it metadata as an asset in a DALIM ES system?
Yeah, I mean, it's whether the ingredient information is specifically called out in some way, whether it's not a specific object that you can recognize. If we can recognize it, we can extract it. But in any way, we would extract any information that is human readable, like text or elements like that, and it would become metadata that could be searchable in ES, which is somewhat different from maybe extracting it for other use directly. It would just become part of the metadata. Next question, which RIPs are compatible with PDF VT? Prinergy, Agfa, Apogee, Harlequin, Adobe, etc. Alan, Matt, you'd mentioned that PDF is a standard that's been around for quite some time, but not a lot of companies and vendors in particular are leveraging it. So, are there any vendors today that are really leveraging it?
I don't want to speak for any particular vendor. I will admit that my background is more on the lower level engineering side, so working with the Adobe PDF Print Engine, Adobe PDF Library, other kind of back-end technologies. I'm not in a position to speak formally for vendors out there as far as their pledge support.
Okay.
So just as a thought, a VT is a fabulous standard. It really is fantastic. It would allow productivity to run so beautifully. The problem is that VT belongs in the hand of the originator, not in the production end of things, because by the time it gets to production, it's a waste of time trying to put it back into VT to get it run on VT on your devices. I'm trying desperately to find clients that have the skill set to be able to take advantage of VT, but as I mentioned before, there's limited skill sets out there for a lot of the clients that we deal with. I did do the research and talk to Global Graphics. Both of Global Graphics RIPs drive both the Indigos and the T240, and I'm assured that they do support VT. I'm sure there's going to be tweaking going on because VT is quite a complex standard, but I'd love to see VT come in. Really love it. It's a fantastic standard. Okay,
next question. And this goes back to your presentation, Alan. You talked about the fact that you've got this pre-flighting process, you've got the normalization process, and you've got the force fix or fail. How are you guaranteeing that the normalized file is okay? Are you pre-flighting again, or are you running it through a visual compare or some other process, or is that something? Okay.
We don't have the time to do that, unfortunately. So it's a leap of faith. Thank you very much, Graham.
Yes. Well, I guess, when you start getting into visual compare and you're doing that comparison, that's very process intensive, and it could lead to more time. So if you're getting 7 9s, I would say that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, so we did a lot of testing. As you know, we had the picture that Carol showed. The other picture, the third picture on the screen, was Dave Kelly, my guy, and Rafael Ordonez, your guy. And we spent a lot of time in that room running tens and hundreds of thousands of files against this to see whether it was reliable. The normalization isn't in question at all. The normalization works. We know that. The writing, there are occasional glitches in writing. When you're writing that many million files at those speeds, there are occasional glitches in writing that go through. But I mean, we really are getting 7/9 reliability when it's going through in terms of the files that are going through. So frankly, it's pointless to go back and do any comparison. Maybe when we get into it afterwards and we're trying to work out the rejects, the dialogue between us and the clients has been fantastic, which is, you know, they absolutely trust us to say that, you know, if there's only a dozen files that have happened since October, that we actually are doing quite well in what we're up to. So there's a level of trust, and if we say it's broke, they understand it's broke, which is really cool.
All right. Quick question for you, Matt. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Obviously, we're talking about a PDF standard in PDF 2.0, and Adobe obviously originated the standard back in the early 90s. Do you have any insight into when a PDF 2.0 would become a preset in Adobe CC?
I don't have any specific insight. I don't speak on behalf of Adobe Systems, I'm afraid.
Well, that's one of the positive things I think that's happened, is that Adobe has now been separated from the standard. So it obviously provides the ability to ensure that it's vendor neutral, so we can all benefit from it,
right?
Both the creators and the processors.
Yeah,
we are well over our time, unfortunately. But if any of you guys, Matt, Alan, or Colin, have any last comments, any of the questions that we didn't get to answer, we will follow up and make sure we get the answers out to those people that posted them after the event. And just as a quick reminder, for those of you that like to receive the magazine, we'll follow up tomorrow with a form for you to complete so we can ship that out to you. And back to you, Matt, Alan, and Colin. Any last comments or observations for the audience?
I think the obvious one is stay safe and don't move around too much. But in terms of the presentation, I'm really gratified to see the movement in standards. Standards are a great thing. I mean, they really are.
Yeah.
So I'll echo what Alan said. You know, stay safe, stay healthy. PDF standards, they will continue to evolve, and getting input from users, from producers, from everybody out there is something that the PDF Association and the standards community heavily relies on. You know, knowing what is working, what isn't working, what could be better, what is ripe for agreement in standardization. Industry feedback is really so important to having a standards process and evolving PDF in a way that benefits the industry and benefits everybody. So I certainly encourage everybody who's interested to, you know, take a look and see if you're interested in joining the conversation or in giving us your feedback.
Thank you, Matt. Any last words, Colin?
Well, just really from my sales perspective, you know, if you want to know more, please contact us. We have a team of people. We can answer your questions, listen to your needs, and provide solutions.
Great, thank you. All right, so we look forward to hopefully meeting some of the attendees at some sort of future event. But in the meantime, you know, everyone, please stay safe and healthy. And hopefully in the foreseeable future, very, very soon, we'll all be back at full speed and the economy will be running again. Apologies for those of you that submitted questions that we didn't get to. We will follow up and hopefully get those answered for you. And on behalf of myself and the rest of the team at DALIM and the attendees, I just want to thank the panelists for their participation and their contribution, which was excellent. Matt Kuznicki, Chairman of the Board of the PDF Association, Alan Darling, Vice President of Information Systems at the Quantum Group, and Colin Price, Strategic Sales at DALIM Software. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and that concludes the webinar.